They told you America was past all that racism was history, just dusty photographs and black and white newsreels. But tonight, in a high school gym smelling of popcorn and wax, you are about to see it rise from the floorboards like smoke. Imagine this: a black Marine, boots polished like mirrors, sitting quietly in his seat to watch his son walk across a stage. He's not asking for applause, not demanding attention. Just a father, a ticket in his hand, a photograph of his late wife pressed against his heart. 8 hours he drove for this moment, 8 hours to keep a promise. And then, 2 guards appear. Not police, not veterans, just young men with radios clipped to their belts and arrogance dripping from their smirks. They tell him to move, to leave the seat he's earned, to go to the back, and when he refuses, when he simply says, "This is my seat, my son is graduating and I will not move," something begins to shift in the air. People lean forward, whispers ripple, phones tilt. A storm begins to coil in silence. Because here's the truth, no one ever admits to you. Injustice doesn't always roar through sirens or echo from burning cities. Sometimes it slithers in soft voices, in a fake smile, in a hand gesturing casually toward the back as if to say, "Know your place." And when it does, when that quiet venom rises, you see who stands and who stays seated. What happens in the next 5 minutes of this story will carve itself into the memory of every single person in that gym. 2 guards thought they had power. They had no idea what power really was. Because 6 men, 6 Navy SEALs, hidden in plain sight among the crowd, were about to rise. They weren't called. They weren't asked. They didn't need to speak. Their presence alone would silence the room. And in that silence, you will understand a truth most men never face until it's too late. Sometimes the difference between humiliation and honor, between fear and respect, rests on who decides to stand beside you. And tonight, the world will learn what happens when a Marine is not left to stand alone. He didn't wear his uniform for attention. Solomon Dryden wore it because it was part of who he was, a second skin stitched with discipline, silence, and scars. That morning when he buttoned the jacket and tightened the belt, he thought only of his son, Tyron, 18 years old, lanky, nervous, wearing the same crooked smile his mother once had. This was supposed to be a day of pride, not another battlefield. Yet the moment Solomon stepped into the gym, he felt it. The eyes, some curious, some respectful, but too many sharp, measuring, searching for a reason to dismiss him. You know the kind of glance. The one that says without words, "You don't belong here." He ignored it, like he had ignored it his entire life. But when the guards came, walking straight toward him, something inside him froze. It wasn't fear. It was memory. He had seen this before, not in the desert, not in combat, but in the waiting rooms of banks, in the lobbies of hotels, in the small-town gas stations that told him politely to try somewhere else. Different uniforms, same message, go to the back. He looked at their faces, both young, both smug in their authority, and he wondered what they saw when they looked at him. Did they see a Marine who had survived firefights in Kandahar? Or just a black man sitting too close to the front? His fingers brushed the edge of the photo tucked in his jacket, his wife cradling Tyran as a baby. She had begged him once to promise he would always show their son that dignity wasn't negotiable, and here it was, a test. One he couldn't fail. He said it calmly, firmly. "This is my seat. I will not move." That was all. No anger, no shouting. Just truth laid flat on the table, but truth hit the air like a spark in dry grass. People turned. Some looked down quickly, pretending not to notice. Others leaned forward, eyes narrowing, caught between curiosity and shame. And then the whispers began. Why are they bothering him? Did he do something? Why him? And Solomon knew, once again, without even trying, he had become a lesson. What the guards didn't know was that he wasn't sitting there alone. because scattered throughout that gym, in places no one paid attention to, sat 6 men who owed him their lives. And the moment things went 1 inch too far, they would remind the world what loyalty really looks like. The shorter guard leaned closer, his voice low enough for only a few rows to hear. "Sir, this is your last warning." But warnings didn't move Solomon. Stillness was his weapon. Stillness was power. He sat as if carved from stone, his eyes locked forward on the stage, his jaw set. For him, the conversation was already over. But the guard wasn't finished. Authority, unchecked, rarely knows when to stop. And that's when it began. It started with one man. A broad frame in a pressed shirt, seated 5 rows back. He stood slowly, deliberately, arms crossing over his chest. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any protest. People nearby glanced up confused. Was this part of the ceremony? No, this was something else. On the opposite side of the gym, another man rose. Same posture, same calm, unblinking focus. He didn't look at the guards. He looked at Solomon, a soldier's gaze. Steady, unshaken. Recognition passed between them like lightning across a silent sky. Then a third stood, then a fourth. Different corners of the gym, different faces, same energy. A ripple went through the crowd. Parents stopped clapping, students craned their necks. Something was happening here, something unscripted, something dangerous. The guards felt it too, though they didn't understand it yet. The taller one shifted on his feet, gum working faster in his jaw. The shorter one tightened his grip on the radio at his hip, eyes darting between the rising men. He had thought this was simple. One man, out of place, easy to push aside. But now the walls were closing in. And then came the voice. Calm, controlled, cutting through the air like steel dragged across stone. Is there a reason this man is being bothered? Heads turned. A man in the center aisle, tall, salt and pepper beard, black coat over a gray shirt. His presence alone froze the moment. Creed Marston. Solomon knew him like he knew the scars on his own hands. Years ago, he had dragged Creed across 200 yards of burning sand in Kandahar, bullets chasing them both. The guards didn't know who he was, but the gym did. They could feel it. The authority in his tone wasn't learned in manuals or written on a badge. It was born in fire. And with every word, the balance of power shifted. The guards had thought they were speaking to one man, but now the entire room was beginning to realize the truth. Solomon Dryden was not alone. The shorter guard blinked at Creed, trying to measure him. His badge said Harlan Security, but his eyes revealed something else. Hesitation. He muttered, "Sir, we've got this under control." Creed's reply cut the air in half. "No, you don't." The words landed like a verdict. Not shouted, not threatened, just final. And in that stillness, the gym shifted. You could feel it, the kind of silence that crawls under your skin, the kind that makes you realize you are watching a line being drawn, one that can't be stepped back over. Garvin, the shorter guard, squared his shoulders, refusing to back down. Ego is louder than wisdom. He muttered something into his radio, as if calling reinforcements would save him from the truth standing in front of him. The taller one, Malley, looked less certain, his gum chewing, faltering, his gaze darting toward the men now standing around the gym. And then it spread. A fifth man rose from the bleacher, his eyes locked on Solomon. Another followed near the far exit, arms folded tight, watching. Their movements weren't rehearsed, but they were identical, controlled, quiet, deliberate. The kind of motion drilled into you by years of missions where hesitation meant death. People in the audience started whispering, then falling silent. A father lowered his camcorder. A child tugged on her mother's sleeve. The air thickened with a presence too large to ignore. This wasn't about a seat anymore. This was about history, about loyalty, about a man's dignity being tested in front of hundreds. Creed stepped closer, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through the tension. You don't put your hands on that man, you don't tell him to move, and you do not ask again. It wasn't just a warning. It was a sentence, delivered with the weight of war zones and gravesides of men who had seen too much and refused to see this. The guards stiffened. They weren't trained for this. They had authority on paper, but in reality they were two men surrounded by a storm they could neither name nor control, and the crowd knew it. You could see it in their faces. For the first time, the people weren't watching the stage. They weren't watching the principal shuffle papers nervously at the podium. They were watching Solomon Dryden, silent, unmoving, and the 6 shadows rising to stand behind him. Power had just changed hands, and the guards were the last to realize it. Solomon didn't move. His body sat in that wobbly plastic chair, eyes fixed on the stage, but his mind was no longer in that gym. The smell of floor wax and popcorn blurred into something harsher, burning metal, diesel smoke, blood in desert sand. Kandahar, 15 years earlier. It had happened fast, too fast. A convoy ambushed on a road that wasn't even on the map. The first Humvee had gone up like paper, shrapnel flying, sand swallowing men whole. He remembered the sound, not the blast, but the silence that followed, the kind of silence that tells you the next breath could be your last. And in that silence, Solomon ran. No Shora, Dio, no backup, just instinct. He dove into wreckage, dragging bodies out from under twisted steel. Creed was one of them, fresh-faced, still bleeding from a bullet through his thigh, still trying to crawl forward even as his leg gave out. Solomon had yanked him up by the vest, shouting through the chaos, "Stay low, move when I move." Creed never forgot. None of them did. There was another, Divas, pinned under the engine block, screaming he was fine, telling Solomon to leave him. But Solomon didn't leave men behind. He dug his boots into the sand, strained against steel heavier than his own body, and lifted until his ribs felt like they'd crack. The block shifted, just enough. Divas rolled free. 6 men lived that day because one man refused to let them die. And now, in a quiet Texas gym, those 6 men were here again. Not in uniform, not armed, but ready. Ready the way only brothers forged in fire can be ready. The crowd couldn't see it, but Solomon could feel it. The presence, the unspoken vow. If those guards laid a single hand on him, 6 storms would converge, silent and unstoppable. Solomon blinked, and the desert fell away. The gym returned. Names were still being called, applause echoing faintly, but no one heard them anymore. The tension was too sharp, too thick. He breathed once, steady and slow. He didn't need to stand. He didn't need to raise his voice. His men had already done it for him. And in that moment, the guards weren't staring at one black Marine in a chair. They were staring at a wall of loyalty, of history, of unbreakable debt. A man can be alone in a room of hundreds. But Solomon Dryden was not alone. Not then, not ever. Garvin's nostrils flared as if the very act of being ignored was a personal insult. He leaned in so close his belt brushed Solomon's knee. His voice rose, carrying over the crowd. "You think wearing that uniform makes you better than ever? Anybody else? This is a high school, man, not your base." The words dropped like a stone in water. The ripples were instant. Conversation stopped. A father froze mid-zoom on his camcorder. A child's giggle died mid-breath. Even Mally, the taller guard, stepped back half an inch, gum going still in his mouth. He hadn't expected his partner to say it out loud, the thing everyone else had only whispered. Solomon didn't blink, didn't move. His stillness made Garvin look smaller, weaker, as if the very effort of trying to provoke him was proof of his own insecurity. And then Solomon said, steady, low, every syllable landing like a weight, "You need to walk away." But Garvin didn't. His hand twitched, hovering near his belt, not a weapon, but close enough to feel like a threat. And that's when Creed moved. He didn't rush, he didn't shout. He stepped into the aisle like gravity itself had shifted, slow and deliberate, until every eye in that gym followed him. His voice was level but sharp enough to pierce bone. "If you touch him, you'll answer to me." Garvin snapped his head around, sneering. "And who the hell are you?" Creed took one more step, eyes locked, voice dropping lower. "The man telling you this ends right now." Behind him, 3 more SEALs rose. No signals, no words, just instinct. The bleachers creaked under their weight. A 5th shifted to the aisle, arms folded, gaze unbroken. Then the 6th, quietest of them all, simply stood at the far back, shoulders squared like a silent verdict. The gym wasn't a gym anymore. It was a battlefield of silence. Parents clutched programs tighter. Teachers froze mid-motion, unsure if they should intervene or retreat. The students, wide-eyed, weren't watching the stage. They were watching history. And the guards felt it, felt the shift. 2 men with radios were now staring down a force they couldn't quantify, couldn't intimidate, couldn't control. Because this wasn't about seats anymore. It wasn't about rules or tickets or school policies. It was about a Marine's dignity. And 6 men who had once chosen to face bullets with him were making it clear. If he was forced to fight again, he would not fight alone. The silence in the gym wasn't silence anymore. It was pressure, thick enough to crush bone. Every breath, every shuffle of a chair sounded deafening. Parents glanced at one another, unsure if they should clap politely at the next name called on stage, or stay frozen in this strange theater unfolding before them. And then it happened. A voice, soft but steady, from an older woman seated near Solomon. "Don't you let them move you." She didn't raise her hand. She didn't even look at him after she said it. But her words cracked something open in the room. 2 rows back, a man muttered, "Leave him be." Another voice followed from the bleachers. "He's here for his son." What began as whispers spread like embers catching dry grass. The crowd wasn't neutral anymore. They were choosing. Quietly, one by one, they were siding with Solomon. The guards noticed. Malley's jaw tightened, gum chewing now frantic. His partner Garvin scanned the faces around him, realizing too late that the numbers had shifted. What had started as 2 men asserting control had turned into 2 men being measured by an entire community, and losing. Creed stayed still, arms crossed, eyes locked on Garvin. The other SEALs didn't speak, didn't move, but their silence roared like artillery. And Solomon, calm as stone, sat in the center of it all, an unmoved man in a world trying to push him back. This is the truth no one tells you. Dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it stands. And when it stands long enough, the world is forced to reveal itself, who will fold and who will rise. And now I need you to rise, right here, right now, as you listen. Drop this phrase into the comments and write it twice so it burns into your mind. I will not move. Type it twice. Let it be your vow, the line you will not cross, the reminder that no one on this earth has the right to push you backward when you know where you belong. Because stories like this aren't just about Marines or SEALs or one father in a gym. They're about you, about the battles you fight when no one else is watching, about the seats you refuse to surrender. And tonight, in this story, you are no longer a spectator. You've stepped onto the floor of that gym. You've chosen your side. Garvin's face flushed red, the kind of red that wasn't anger. It was panic dressed up as rage. He opened his mouth, but no words came, because for the first time, he wasn't just staring at one man in a chair. He was staring at a wall of eyes. Dozens, then hundreds. Parents, teachers, neighbors, all silently declaring, "We see you. We see what you're doing." Malley shifted his weight, suddenly unsure if he was supposed to back his partner or retreat. His gum popped loudly in the quiet, and even that small sound felt obscene. He muttered, "Let's just handle this later." But Garvin couldn't let go. Pride was a leash choking him. He jabbed a finger toward Solomon's chest, voice cracking. "You think they'll save you? Huh? You think? That was it. Creed moved again, not fast, not reckless, just one more step forward, closing the air between them like a door slamming shut. His eyes never left Garvin's, his voice low but razor sharp. That hand drops an inch closer, and you won't finish the sentence. Behind him, the other SEALs straightened in perfect unison. No signal, no nod, no command. Just instinct. Years of muscle memory from battlefields where hesitation meant death. 6 bodies, 6 wills, aligned without a word. The crowd could feel it, the shift. The air grew heavier, denser, as though the gym itself understood history was balancing on the edge of a knife. A boy in the back row whispered to his mother, "Mom, are they soldiers?" She shushed him, but her hand trembled as she squeezed his shoulder. And in the center, Solomon finally moved. Not much, just a slow lift of his chin, eyes meeting Garvin's. No threat, no anger, only unshaken certainty. The kind of look that doesn't need words to say, "I've faced worse men than you, and I am still here." That look gutted Garvin. He faltered, his finger hovering mid-air, hand trembling just enough for everyone to see it. The illusion of authority was gone. In that instant, the guards weren't the ones in control anymore. They were the ones on trial. The verdict was written in silence, in the faces of 100 witnesses, in the steel presence of 6 men who would not let their brother fall. And Garvin realized, too late, that the battle was already lost. Garvin's hand dropped, not onto Solomon, but back to his own side, stiff and awkward. His lips pressed thin, his chest rising fast as though every ounce of air in the gym had turned against him. Mally muttered something sharp under his breath, tugged at his partner's sleeve, and for the first time that night, Garvin obeyed. They stepped back, not gracefully, not in command. They retreated the way men do when they've been unmasked, walking forward but shrinking with every step. The radios at their belts looked small now, almost laughable, against the silent force of 6 Navy SEALs and the quiet defiance of 1 Marine who refused to move. The crowd didn't cheer, they didn't clap, they didn't need to. Their silence was louder than any applause, and it was aimed squarely at the backs of those guards as they slipped toward the edge of the gym, swallowed by the shadows near the double doors. The principal, pale and stiff, cleared his throat into the microphone. His voice cracked as he called the next graduate's name. A boy in a Navy cap walked the stage, grinning nervously, clutching his diploma like it was the last fragile piece of normalcy left. Slowly, haltingly, the ceremony resumed. But no one was really watching the stage, not fully. Their eyes kept drifting back to Solomon, to the man who hadn't moved, to the men who had risen without question, without hesitation, without asking permission. And Solomon? He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. He simply sat there, chin high, gaze forward, waiting for his son's name to be called. Because that was all this had ever been about. 1 father, 1 son, 1 moment that mattered more than anyone else's rules. When his boy finally crossed the stage, diploma in hand, their eyes met across the gym. The son grinned, proud, relieved, unknowing of the storm that had just passed. Solomon's lips lifted just slightly into the smallest of smiles, the kind only a warrior makes when the battle is over and the victory is quiet. That night, no one left the gym unchanged. They carried the weight of what they had seen, the silent warning of 6 men, the dignity of 1, and the collapse of those who thought authority was enough to crush respect. Because sometimes the most powerful victories are won without fists, without bullets, without shouts. Sometimes they're won by simply refusing to move,